episode of Surviving the Survivor, we bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy-award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
From America is safe, from Astroglide to We Own the Domestic Violence, and a final plea to summon the courage to acquit. It was a 4-hour summation from Sean Diddy Combs' defense, packed with contradiction, courtroom theater, and bold attempts to reframe serious allegations. What's up, STS Nation? Welcome to Surviving the Survivor. It is the show that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. And when there are massive trials going on in the United States, we bring you updates as we are doing right now. We have reached a critical point in the Sean Diddy Combs versus United States government trial. And that, of course, is that both sides have rested the defense without bringing any witnesses. Just a few more text messages. Yesterday, the government going on with a nearly 5-hour closing argument. Today, 4+ hours for the defense. And it was delivered by the very shrewd criminal defense attorney in New York City, Mark Agnifilo. So we are going to break it all down, and let's get into it right now, starting at 9 a.m. Eastern time. It is 4:17, just for reference right now. U.S. District Judge Arun Subramanian gaveling the court in at 9 a.m. This is obviously and was expected to be the absolute final day of arguments before deliberations begin. Sean Diddy Combs entering the courtroom. As he has done in the past, he made a series of gestures to the family. He waved. He gave a heart signal, the old heart signal, and a thumbs up as well, signaling to some a bit of defiance and emotional connection with his family and perhaps even the jurors and those in the gallery ahead of what was a very critical day in terms of his future existence here, whether he goes to prison or not. 9:27 a.m., the theatrics got underway. Defense attorney Mark Agnifilo, he was running the show today and said to be one of the best criminal defense attorneys in all of New York City. He did something sort of dramatic, and there he is right there. And I had a chance to speak to him when I was up there during week one. But basically, even before beginning his closings, he began pacing around the defense lectern. He was testing microphones and sort of checking to see just how far he could walk and still be picked up clearly so as to be on the record. But it was clear that he wanted to give this theatrical touch and be able to connect with the jurors, even walk closely toward them in their jury box. So he took a moment. He took that big breath, that dramatic pause, if you will, before beginning the closings. And he says, and I quote here, this was not his quote. This was one of the reporters reporting on it, talking about the moment when Agnifilo starts, that it is a final push for Sean Combs. And that's exactly what it was. Theme one, they broke this up into multiple themes, was this is a lifestyle trial, not a criminal one. We knew that was coming about the, quote unquote, swingers lifestyle. Mark Agnifilo painted the entire government's case as one rooted in quote unquote moral outrage, not law. Here are some direct quotes. It is a trial of a lifestyle. If you want to call it swingers, that's what it is. That is what the evidence shows. He sharply criticized the application of racketeering and sex trafficking statutes. Of course, the racketeering is the RICO, arguing that they were misused in this case. And here is another direct quote. The prosecutors have charged one of the most serious, complicated, and comprehensive statutes on the books, referring to the RICO. Again, the prosecutors have charged one of the most serious, complicated, and comprehensive statutes on the books. And then he turned to race and success. And he reframed or recast Sean Diddy Combs as the target himself, saying Sean Combs, and this is a direct quote here, has become something that is very, very hard to be. He is a self-made, successful Black entrepreneur. Very interesting. I don't know that I was expecting this. Some are going to say he pulled the race card here, and to deflect these criminal charges is saying, look, they're going after a Black man, and ultimately, whether people wanted race or not to come into it, Mark Agnifilo just brought it in without any doubt, without any hesitation. Theme 2, the raids were a joke. Around 9:52 a.m., we get to the Astroglide and the baby oil, and Agnifilo basically makes a mockery of it. And this is a direct quote. He was sarcastic. He was almost condescending. He said, "Way to go, fellas. You guys just do you." They took Astroglide and baby oil, and that is the evidence in the case. Some of the government prosecutors weren't too happy with this, and we'll see how this crescendos in a minute. But he continued, did Mark Agnifilo, saying, "America is safe from Astroglide." Of course, he's mocking now. There were some chuckles in the courtroom. There is nothing about the business to make it a criminal case. There is nothing about the businesses to make it a criminal case. So he's saying, look, it's Astroglide. It's a lifestyle. It ain't a crime. Flawed but loved, theme number 3, some would say, and the loyalty of his employees. Agnifilo leaned on testimony, not learned, from Sean Combs' former employers, many obviously who acknowledge sort of his erratic behavior, that's putting it politely, but yet continued to praise or even work for him. And we knew this was coming because the assistant, Mia, she came back for more, and we heard this from others as well. We heard it from the disgruntled first assistant, George Kaplan, who still kind of stays in touch with Sean Diddy Combs, who still wishes him happy birthdays via text every year. That came out in testimony. Mark Agnifilo asked sort of a rhetorical question. He said, did they always like him? No way, he said, but they loved him, even the ones who are suing him. Interesting, because that is a word that was thrown around by these victims, that they were in love with Sean Diddy Combs. So he took that as an opportunity. And I got to say, this is simple. It's not, I don't think, overthought, but to me, it's fairly effective because he's now taking the words. And by simple, I mean just taking the simplicity of the words, "I love you," and then turning them around to be able to do this and then weave it together into a closing is why they're paying Mark Agnifilo the big bucks. Imagine, I was thinking about this earlier. This guy didn't even present a defense, and he's getting paid oodles and oodles and oodles of money from Sean Diddy Combs without literally ever bringing a defense. But these closings were crucial. So he likened, Mark Agnifilo did, working for Combs to drinking from a fire hose, but argued that it was part of the intense world that Sean Combs built and not part of his criminality. Then he gets into what is described as a complicated love story, and there is an open admitting and admittance to violence here. Mark Agnifilo, I guess, shocked some. I think we were expecting this because they had kind of, I don't know, they had kind of foretold this earlier in the trial. But Mark Agnifilo comes straight out and addresses the elephant in the room, which was, of course, the violent beating of Cassie Ventura caught on that 2016 video at the Intercontinental Hotel in Century City. He says, and I quote here, "We own the domestic violence. I hope you guys know that," he said plainly. "We own the domestic violence. I hope you guys know that." Interestingly, he's not charged for domestic violence, but he is saying that we do own it. And I don't think there's anyone who's going to watch that video and not think that there was domestic violence. But then he quickly pivots and he reminds jurors what this trial is really about. And I quote here again, "He did not do the things he is charged with, racketeering or sex trafficking. He didn't kidnap anyone or obstruct justice. He's going to fight to the death to defend himself against what he didn't do." Then he gets into what he describes as sort of a great modern love story. And Mark Agnifilo doubles down on his own narrative that Cassie and Diddy were actually in love. And we heard this from Cassie Ventura out of her own mouth, even if that love was toxic. And I quote Mark Agnifilo here. He says, "It's complicated, but they are truly in love with each other, and that is what defines their relationship. It is based on love." Keep in mind, she's now married to another man, Alex Fine, and has, I believe it's 3 children with him, giving birth to one of them during this very trial, right after she gave testimony, which is kind of wild. So I don't think they're in love anymore. And then he adds, Mark Agnifilo does, "If racketeering conspiracy had an opposite, it would be their relationship." Now, I don't know exactly what that means. I don't know. That's a bit of gamesmanship and wordsmanship and wordsmithship. But he says, if racketeering conspiracy had an opposite, it would be their relationship. I guess if you're a juror, you can sit there and scratch your head and go, wait a minute. If racketeering conspiracy was not, I don't think it is an opposite, but I think Mark Agnifilo knows how to throw curveballs, and that is what he is doing to this panel of jurors here to see how they react. Then comes the most jarring quote of the morning. After conceding to this savage beating, there's no way around it because it's on video, and the government played it again. It's been played multiple times. I forget exactly how many, but a lot. And it was played again during the government's closing. Mark Agnifilo describes Cassie Ventura as far from helpless. And this is where he starts getting aggressive. Again, you'll recall when they initially, and it wasn't him, it was Tenny Garagos, but when Cassie was initially cross-examined, it was sort of with kid gloves. Well, not today. So he says, "I'm not going to be judgy, but she played him good. And that is not something anyone can do. Cassie is like a gangster. Cassie is like a gangster." I'm going to read that again. "I'm not going to be judgy, but she played him good. And that is not something anyone can do. Cassie is like a gangster." So, little reverse psychology. He's now taking the victim, making her the gangster. Curious what you all think about that. That could be a fairly big gamble if you're the criminal defense attorney. If there are people on there who are sympathetic to Cassie, I cannot imagine that they're going to like that line, turning Cassie herself into the gangster. But he's a gangsta criminal defense attorney, meaning a good one. And so it's going to be curious to see how that plays out. He cited, as for being a gangster, he cited her use of a burner phone and her romantic involvement with Kid Cudi, that she was playing him off another guy while still with Sean Combs, as proof that she had autonomy. She could go wherever she wanted, date whoever she wanted, and she was not trafficked or coerced. Again, this is going to be have to be defined by the jurors themselves. This is where they're going to deliberate and probably argue with each other. Was this coercive? Was this by choice? I mean, ultimately, everyone, has a choice in life, but was she able to liberate herself? Were there psychological factors involved, the financial factors? The government did a good job in pointing all of those out. Is the defense doing a good job now in kind of, beating that whole drum down and not letting the jurors fall into this and believe that she was, in fact, a victim? Of course, the government says she was. Diddy was very alert and engaged during this part, as he was for most of the closings, but they were 4+ hours, so it went on and on. But theme 5 here, we get to countering the government's narrative. And he says, quite simply, Mark Agnifilo, it's not a criminal enterprise. He starts talking about the Kid Cudi Porsche. We saw photos, we had experts on that it was firebombed. What's important is that was never directly linked to Sean Diddy Combs. There were clues that it was connected to the business, but not necessarily Sean Diddy Combs himself. So he tackles this claim that Diddy torched Kid Cudi's Porsche back in 2012. And that was, again, all because Sean Diddy Combs finds out that Kid Cudi is now dating his girl, Cassie Ventura. And he says, and I quote, "Now let's talk about this nonsense with the Porsche." So he's very dismissive. Let's talk about this nonsense with the Porsche. There is no evidence that he had anything to do with the Porsche. Nothing. He dismisses the notion of stealthy attacks, saying that if Sean Combs had an issue with Scott Muscuddy, who is Kid Cudi, it would have been direct. That's what he says. So now he's bringing sort of an alternate theory, if you will, saying, and I quote here, if my client had a beef, it would have led to a one-on-one brawl, which is sort of laughable. Because I don't think Sean Diddy is the kind of guy that's going to brawl anybody. He's the kind of guy that's got an AR-15 style assault weapon. We saw him do that. We saw him go after, why am I blanking? But we saw him go after Suge Knight. Knew it would come to me. I'm not too, I don't know, literate when it comes to my hip hop stars. But Suge Knight, we know in testimony that he went after Suge Knight at the Mel's Drive-In restaurant in LA. So this notion that he's going to fight Kid Cudi one-on-one, man-to-man, mano-a-mano in a brawl, sort of laughable. And it's kind of funny coming from Mark Agnifilo, who's, as I said, a very kind of sweet, likable guy when he's not maybe in a courtroom defending someone like Sean Diddy Combs, but he's also the last guy on planet Earth that's going to get into a brawl, and he's talking about brawls, which is kind of funny. So kidnapping accusations are now deconstructed going into closer to the noon hour. And here, Mark Agnifilo turns to Cassie Ventura's 2009 beating and her subsequent stay at the London Hotel in Los Angeles. Mark Agnifilo admitted there was violence, but again, he forcefully rejects the claim of kidnapping. So the DV, yes. The kidnapping charges, no. He argues that after Sean Combs beat Cassie Ventura inside an SUV and that her face was visibly swollen and bleeding, this is separate from the other video, by the way, that she was taken to the hotel for quote-unquote her own good and to keep the incident out of the press. And then he says, and I quote, "It's not a kidnapping when you want to go to the house of the guy you're charging with kidnapping. It is not a kidnapping when you want to go to the house of the guy you're charging with kidnapping." First of all, she's not charging him with anything. It's the government. Second of all, this is the issue of coercive control again. And again, look, he's a defense attorney. He's trying to muddy the waters here. And so he's conflating some things that aren't necessarily one and the same. So he is basically saying, look, she went with him. It's not a kidnapping, but she had gone with him previously, and she was dependent on him financially, emotionally, in other ways as well. So, again, this is going to be a tough grind, I think, for the jurors. But who knows? Maybe we get a verdict back much sooner than we think. A lot of people think it could go through next week. I have a feeling we'll get a verdict of some sort at some point next week before the holiday. Again, 11:34. This is before the lunch break. The lead prosecutor, Maureen Comey, she objects finally because there was a very sarcastic tone, a very condescending tone to Mark Agnifilo. And finally, she has enough and says it is, quote unquote, inappropriate argumentation. But Mark Agnifilo is completely unapologetic. And he responds, "Respectfully, I think I'm allowed to be sarcastic." And that drew a warning from Judge Arun Subramanian, who is a very kind of middle of the road, doesn't take a side, judge's judge, which is exactly what a judge is supposed to be. And he steps in at that point and he says, "Mr. Agnifilo, for you, please don't do that again. It's grossly improper." Kind of curious if Judge Subramanian has children, because he would probably yell at them out. "Hank, please don't do that again. Hank, it's grossly improper." Like, imagine if your dad's a judge. "It is grossly improper, Hank. Do not wipe your nose on your shirt. It is grossly improper." Theme 6, love, not labor. And debunking the Mia testimony here. So this is right after, a few minutes after noon, literally around 12:04. And this is the part where love and money come together. Mark Agnifilo attacks the credibility now of another victim, this time Mia, who's a former assistant. She testified she was sexually assaulted and forced to work under coercion. And he says, Mark Agnifilo, and you can see how animated he is in the courtroom. And this guy is, look, he's a phenomenal lawyer, but to be a great lawyer, you've got to be an actor. You've got to dredge up those emotions. And I don't know why they drew Judge Arun Subramanian with what looks like Batman's mask there, which is kind of funny, but he's got looks like two raccoon eyes there. This is where love and money come together, Mark Agnifilo says. Mia loved working with Sean Combs. Forced labor is when you want to be out of there as soon as possible. Again, Mia loved working with Sean Combs. Forced labor is when you want to be out of there as soon as possible. Now, this isn't like working in a sweatshop somewhere on the Lower East Side. You're working here for one of the biggest hip-hop artists in the world, which he sort of fails to mention in that remark. He brings up an Instagram post that Mia once made, publicly wishing Sean Combs a happy 45th birthday. This came up in testimony earlier in the trial, and he goes on to say it was platonic love and admiration. Platonic love and admiration. Instagram postings, wonderful pictures and slogans. And then Agnifilo adds, and I quote, the prosecutor said that was part of her job. That's how she really felt. That's how she really felt. It was part of her job. So 12:15 this afternoon, we get into drug use and the criminal enterprise. Mark Agnifilo acknowledges that Sean Combs used drugs, but argued it was personal, that it was not part of any larger conspiracy. He says Ventura, meaning Cassie, considered Combs a drug addict with a preference for painkillers, ecstasy, and Xanax, he said. But he added, and I quote, distribution as part of a racketeering conspiracy, and there is no evidence of that. So one thing he is doing that I think is important is that he is pointing out all of the flaws, the foibles, the illicit activity, the drug use, and he's just folding it all into this lifestyle. And the fact that, okay, so he used drugs, but he didn't do it in a criminal manner with criminal intent. It was not a conspiracy. I think there's a lot pointing to the fact that there was a criminal element in a criminal conspiracy, but that is not for you or I to decide. It is for those 8 men and 4 women sitting on the jury. Theme number 8, coming up around 12:21 this afternoon. It was not sex trafficking, he underscores again. It was their lifestyle. He flat out, Mark Agnifilo does, reject the government's central charge of sex trafficking, calling it the easiest accusation to make. And he says, and I quote, this is his girlfriend. There is no suggestion that he is making money from this. This is their personal life. And he continued, they are swingers. This is their lifestyle. They are swingers. This is their lifestyle. So you got the government on the one hand, force, fraud, coercion, sex trafficking, Mark Agnifilo. It's just a lifestyle choice. That's it. So he beats her and drugs her and does all these other things. But that's just moral outrage. That's going to be for the jurors to decide. And he says, and I quote, evidence shows Ventura wanted to participate because this is how they are close. So now he's putting it right back on Cassie. This is also why some people think that criminal defense attorneys are sleazy, because they are taking the victim here and turning her into essentially the gangster criminal. He even called her a gangster. And he says, evidence shows Ventura, and by the way, you notice he's not calling her Cassie, he's calling her Ventura. Evidence shows Ventura wanted to participate because this is how they are close. Your likes and their likes become one, and that is what love is, and that is what was going on with Cassie. That is what was going on with Cassie. Confidence, not a victim, and get into a line with Michael B. Jordan. He emphasized Cassie Ventura's agency, noting her relationship with actor Michael B. Jordan, and says, and I quote, when she wasn't with Sean Combs, she was with Michael B. Jordan, the most handsome man in the world. She was not going to slow down, which is funny because it's coming from Mark Agnifilo. I didn't know that he thought that Michael B. Jordan was the most handsome man in the world, but there you go. Look at this. Brianna Davis yelling at me, my side comments. Forgive me, Brianna Davis. I will stay on track here. He adds after that, she is at a high level. She has sexual confidence. Good for her. She's not clutching her pearls. This was her lifestyle. Again, attacking the victim. And it's an interesting, way to approach this, because he is literally just going after her as wanting all of this stuff. Again, saying she's at a high level. She has sexual confidence. Good for her that she was the one running the show with her sex appeal. We get into another theme, which is him breaking down the 2016 hotel assault footage. Mark Agnifilo attempts to sort of recontextualize the now infamous 2016 Intercontinental Hotel footage, which shows Sean Diddy Combs beating up on Cassie Ventura. This obviously is perhaps the most critical piece of evidence. He points to the moment that Cassie Ventura was seen carrying 2 bags in one hand and something in her other, while Sean Combs was empty-handed and pursuing her. Later in the footage, Sean Combs is seen with a cell phone in his right hand, and Mark Agnifilo implied that Cassie had Sean Combs' phone, and he was confronting her to get it back. So now the tables are flipped once again. Now she's getting beaten because she took his phone. That's what's going on now, all of a sudden, in that lobby. That he had a reason, I guess, according to Mark, not me, but according to Mark Agnifilo, to go and hit her because she took the phone. And he says this wasn't an ambush. It was a heated argument between lovers over privacy and possession. We get into the afternoon here. We're about 2:22 in the afternoon. And now Mark Agnifilo is obviously there was a lunch break, but they are reframing the Freakoffs not as crimes, but simply as wild nights, or quote unquote as Mark put it, a quote unquote nice quality to the evening. You can't make this stuff up. Mark Agnifilo sought to deconstruct this disturbing portrayal by the government of these drug, sex-fueled marathons. He says, and I quote here, "Everyone is smiling. It is a sex party. They are eating food. Cassie's eating watermelon. They're listening to music. There's a nice quality to these evenings." We had coercive control expert on our show who called these sexual torture sessions. And here's a criminal defense attorney saying that there's a nice quality to these evenings. He pointed out that even the escorts who testified described the events as social, with quote unquote a lot of talking and hanging out. There was no coercion, he argued, just adults indulging in their sexual preferences. Just adults indulging in their sexual preferences. A little after 2 again, Combs filming escorts. And so what, says Mark Agnifilo. The defense admitting that Sean Combs often filmed his girlfriends having sex with male escorts, but made the case that this was personal, not criminal, and says, and I quote, "He's not the only man in America making homemade porn," Agnifilo said bluntly. What's interesting to me is you sort of expect this highbrow criminal defense because you're paying this guy literally millions of dollars. And it's a very simple argument in a lot of ways. It's just simplistic in its nature, just point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint. But look, he's saying other people film their private sex acts. That's what Sean Diddy Combs did. And I wonder if it's going to resonate. Is there a juror on there? I don't know. Is filming his wife? I have no idea. But is that going to have that juror thinking that that's all this was? That is what Mark Agnifilo is trying to do. He insisted that there was no threat of blackmail, no trafficking for profit. just private recordings made during what Combs called his quote-unquote Wild King Nights. Wild King Nights. Then disputing the R allegation, that rhymes with grape, Mark Agnifilo flatly challenged Cassie Ventura's most serious accusation that she was actually, you know what, by Sean Combs in September 2018 after their breakup. I suggest to you, maybe it didn't happen. That's what Mark Agnifilo says. I suggest to you, maybe that didn't happen. So now he's calling her a gangster, and now, in so many words, he's calling her a liar. He cites a text message that Cassie Ventura sent Sean Combs the day after the alleged assault. She says, after this assault, in a text message, and I quote, "I had a lot of fun with you. Thank you. I told myself I didn't want anything to happen." The defense offers a motive theory, arguing that Cassie Ventura may have invented the story when confronted by her then boyfriend, now husband, this guy Alex Fine, after missing a FaceTime call during the alleged encounter. So now they're suddenly bringing this in, that she's making this up because of a missed call, and that's why she says that she was AR'd by Sean Diddy Combs. You make a lot of money as a criminal defense attorney, but it ain't always pretty, as we're seeing here. Mark Agnifilo, at little after 3 o'clock, pushes back on the notion that Sean Combs hired male sex workers in violation of trafficking laws. And he says, despite Combs' frequent hiring of men from escort services, that should not be viewed as a sexual act, he said. He noted the agency even clarified that Combs was paying for time, not sex. They used an agency a lot of times called Cowboys and Angels. And he's saying, look, all we were doing was paying for time, not for sex. There was not evidence of that, he says. No one ever said, "Hi, I'm a male prostitute." That is the exact words of Mark Agnifilo. No one ever said, "Hi, I'm a male prostitute." And he references a moment when Sean Combs asked for a discount from the agency. Proof, he said, that it was a business transaction for companionship and not prostitution. But how is that proof? Maybe he wanted a discount on the prostitution. Again, conflating some issues, muddying the waters, the job of an excellent criminal defense attorney. Think about that. Before becoming a criminal defense attorney, you've got to say some crazy things to get clients off, and that's what Mark Agnifilo is doing today. Jane was a willing participant. It was like spring break, another theme here for Mark Agnifilo. He used Jane's own words to recharacterize the now notorious freak-off with a porn actor named Anton. She says, "I showed my friends, it sounds like spring break." So this is him quoting her. She says, "I showed my friends, it sounds like spring break." He implied that Jane was fully in control, even choosing Anton herself, and highlighted alleged inconsistencies in her testimony, including claims that she got physically aggressive with Sean Combs when she wasn't getting what she wanted and needed from a financial standpoint. Once again, the victim becoming the perpetrator here, the victim Jane becoming the perpetrator, at least according to the defense attorney. Scary gun to scare you. Mark Agnifilo attacks the government's inclusion of firearm evidence as nothing more than an emotional tactic. I got to say, I think this guy's, with what he has, he's doing well. So now he's saying, look, you're taking a scary weapon. He didn't mention the fact that the serial numbers are, missing from the weapon, shaved off. But he goes, and I quote, "You brought out a big, nasty, scary gun to scare you. For what purpose?" He questioned the government's incomplete accounting of weapons, suggesting a sloppy investigation. That can be reflected, he says, on how much you trust them. So he's saying that they didn't have the precise number of guns, indexed, whatever. So now he's saying that can be reflected on how much you trust the government. Now taking the weapons and making it the problem of the government. And then there is a final ask. Comes up at about 3:25 this afternoon, well over an hour ago here on the East Coast. And it was about 4 hours and 3 minutes into his closings. And he says, you should feel the courage. He's saying this to the jurors now. You should feel the courage to call it as you see it. And I'm asking you to summon the courage and do the right thing. Acquit Sean Combs of all the accounts. He is not a racketeer. He sits there innocent. So return him to his family who has been waiting for him. Final words. So, quick breakdown. The defense, Mark Agnifilo, however you want to pronounce it. I get hate mail both ways. The defense, 4 hours and 3 minutes, a 4-hour and 3-minute closing, which is sort of unbelievably incredible when you think of how much Mark got paid to do this, which is, I believe, millions of dollars. And didn't have to bring a defense, had to cross-examine some people. He didn't do a lot of the cross-exam, but it's a good gig, I guess, if you can get it. And, you want to live with yourself. And Mark's, look, I think he's a good guy. He's doing his job. Prosecution, they went 4 hours and 49 minutes. And you heard Lauren Conlon say yesterday, when everyone thought it was over, she told the judge, and COE is heading into the next studio, 5 o'clock. Great Scott to True Crime Phil. It's back. And we're talking Barry Morphew and crazy true crime stories of the week. And I think you're going to be redirected. COE, I'm eventually in 2 seconds going to just log off here. So, thank you from Just Annie K, standing up for good old Joel. Judge Arun Subramanian, he's going to charge the jury Monday with instructions. If you haven't heard this already, 118 pages of instructions, 118 pages of jury instructions, and he has to read every single word into the record. They're complicated instructions. If I'm the jurors and I was allowed to, I would bring in my headphones and I'd be listening to, I don't know what, but they have to listen, so they can't do that. They've got to listen to this. The court is dark on July 4th, which I believe is next Friday. So it is going to be a very tight turnaround for deliberations. If this is a jury that already has its mind made up, then deliberations could end quickly. A verdict could come quickly. A lot of people are saying this is likely to go past the July 4th weekend. I don't know. Jurors like to get out of there. We heard yesterday they're expecting a mixed verdict potentially. No one really knows except the jurors. So we'll see how this all plays out. But coming up in about 7 minutes on the other channel, we are doing Barry Morphew with Phil and Scott. Great Scott. It's your true crime Phil. We are back at it. And then Sunday, Carmen and I want to bring you another episode of Leave a Comment. The COE is going to build us a channel just for that we're going to direct everybody to. She just doesn't know she's going to build it in the next 2 days. So there you go. Katra, I can't see because I'm losing my eyesight, but thank you. Nice to get a nice comment when I look up and I see, there you go, going off track again. If you don't like me going off track, go watch the old boring news with boring ass Tom Yamas on the NBC Nightly News tonight. You get 20 seconds of this. 5 seconds of it will be him talking, saying nothing because he's a corporate hack. And then you can watch uninterrupted. But when you come to my channel, you are getting a little bit of commentary. Love you all. For F's sakes, it's pronounced Agnifilo. Are you married to this dude? I would like to know, because I've heard Agnifilo, I've heard Agnifilo, I've heard them both. So I don't know who made Di the pronouncer in chief, but I'll go with it. Luckily, I'm not gonna have to say his names. I don't know. I'm thinking of collecting channels, maybe like 13,331 channels. The only reason we do that is because Leave a Comment is not a true crime show, and we have a true crime channel. So there you go. Get it right, jury, please. Fingers crossed. These are victims, not defendants. Well, according to Mark Agnifilo, couldn't you have a simple name like Smith? You heard it. the defense turned her into the gangster today and Sean Diddy Combs into the good guy. We'll see. We love you, Joel. No one cares what his name is, except maybe his mother and his wife. I'm sure his mom is proud that he brought that up, by the way. He did bring that up today. He said that I'm sure my mom is proud of me because he had to read some expletive-filled text messages, and he asked for his mother to forgive him. So he's not the only one. I do that too. Mark and I have a common bond. I'll see you on the other channel. Thank God it's Friday. Love you, America. Justice for Diddy's victims. This guy's a great criminal defense attorney, but was the government better? We're going to find out. Stay tuned.